Notre Dame is closing in on a major move behind the scenes. According to multiple reports, Marcus Freeman is moving toward hiring James Blanchard to be the program's next general manager. Why this move could be a home run hire for the Irish. Plus, the 2025 schedule just dropped, and there are some big-time matchups on the horizon. We're breaking it down right here on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and I appreciate you joining me here on Tuesday, February 4th, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Please remember to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast if you have not done so already. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, here's what we got in store for you today. First, we're going to break down the latest on Notre Dame's pursuit of James Blanchard and why he is such an intriguing option to be the program's next general manager. Then we'll dive into what his potential arrival could mean for the program and how he could elevate Notre Dame's efforts in recruiting and the transfer portal. Finally, we'll take a deep dive into the 2025 schedule, which was officially announced at the end of last week. And man, it's pretty tough. But let's get started with James Blanchard. So if Notre Dame can get this over the line, I believe this could be a home run hire. I'm recording this late on Monday night after 8 p.m. Pacific time. So if by the time you're watching or listening to this news becomes official and James Blanchard is going to be the next general manager, we're going to talk about all of this as it is a matter of certainty. Or if the deal somehow falls through and then James Blanchard does not end up going to Notre Dame, well, I wasted a bunch of time and energy getting ready for this show, but I feel pretty confident that James Blanchard is going to be the next general manager at Notre Dame. According to John Bryce from Football Scoop, Notre Dame is close to finalizing a deal with Blanchard. He was reportedly on campus this weekend, meeting with Marcus Freeman and members of the Notre Dame coaching staff inside the Goog. So all signs point to him ending up at Notre Dame. Plus, I saw a couple Texas Tech beat writers saying that he is pretty much going to end up with Notre Dame. So we're going to find out soon whether or not he is going to become Notre Dame, but we do know how Notre Dame operates when it comes to hiring assistants and members of the support staff. It doesn't always happen swiftly, to say the least, but I do expect an announcement here in the very near future. So I believe that James Blanchard has been Notre Dame's top target for the position pretty much as soon as Chad Bowden left to go to USC. And honestly, the fact that Marcus Freeman didn't try to match Chad Bowden's new salary at USC and the fact that they didn't really fight like hell to try to keep him makes me think that they were already thinking about James Blanchard at the time that Chad Bowden said he was going to leave. I'm sure Notre Dame would love to have both of those guys, but once Chad Bowden made his intentions clear that he was going to end up with USC, Notre Dame was going to put all of their attention on getting James Blanchard to come to Notre Dame. As I said, maybe by the time you're listening to this, it'll be official, but the fact that he has not turned it down, the fact that we're already at this phase really suggests that he's going to end up at Notre Dame. So who is he? Let's dive into the profile here. He has been with Texas Tech for the past 3 seasons, including 2 as the general manager for the Red Raiders. He was really the first major addition to Joey McGuire's staff once he became the head coach over there at Texas Tech, so he clearly values him. And he has been identified as one of the rising personnel and recruiting staffers in college football dating back to August 2022 when he was recognized by On3. And then I have seen him on other sites and other lists recognizing the top personnel staffers in college football. He is considered a rising star in the industry. As a matter of fact, Texas Tech signed him to a new deal last August because there were a bunch of potential suitors for James Blanchard to try and get him to leave Texas Tech, but they upped the ante. They signed him to reportedly a 2-year, $800,000 deal. So what does he do at Texas Tech? Well, there's a very interesting excerpt from his bio on the Texas Tech athletic website. Blanchard and his staff identify and are responsible for identifying every prospect Texas Tech ultimately offers a scholarship opportunity, allowing McGuire and his coaching staff to prioritize player development and scouting, especially during the season, end quote. That would suggest that he has a lot of autonomy when it comes to building this roster, especially during the season, as they clearly state in his bio. So that tells you the amount of trust that the coaching staff has in him in constructing this roster. But his experience goes beyond just Texas Tech. He also served as the director of recruiting and the assistant AD for player personnel at Baylor under Matt Rule. He actually followed Matt Rule to the NFL, spent one season in the NFL as a scout for the Carolina Panthers, but then he went back to college and he's had a lot of success there. And that's a big reason why he's Notre Dame's top choice. I think there are three key reasons why Notre Dame is pursuing James Blanchard. Number one, he is elite at recruiting and evaluating talent. Texas Tech had not finished inside the top 30 of the 24/7 Sports team composite rankings for over a decade. James Blanchard came in, and they finished in the top 30 in back-to-back seasons. They finished number 28 in 2023 and number 25 in 2024. According to Eric Thomas from Irish Illustrated, Texas Tech drastically increased their talent haul in high school recruiting and the transfer portal under Blanchard. Their high school recruiting class ranking went up 16 spots in the national rankings in the 2 years under James Blanchard compared to the previous 4 years on average. If you look at their overall class rankings, which includes the transfer portal, they went up by 32 spots on average in the national rankings, and they increased their blue chip ratio by 20%. That is a major overhaul in a short period of time at a place where it's not really easy to recruit. Like, sure, Texas Tech has resources and there's plenty of great football being played in Texas, but Texas runs that state. And Texas A&M is not far behind them. And you also have to compete with Oklahoma, which isn't far away. Those programs have more history, more prestige than Texas Tech. So to get those kinds of results at a program like Texas Tech is even more impressive. They were also very effective in the transfer portal. Their most recent transfer portal class finished third in the entire country. This is the most recent one. They're right up there with LSU and Ole Miss, two of the programs who are basically personified by their ability to get players in the transfer portal, specifically Ole Miss. So you have LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech. One of these things is not like the other, but it's a testament to what James Blanchard and his staff have done with the Red Raiders. And like I said, they have money, so that's definitely a part of it, for sure. There's a lot of oil money in West Texas. If you don't know about it, watch The Landman, that show with Billy Bob Thornton. I got to admit, it's one of my favorite hate watches. Luke Smith and my friend Ryan Wilson actually put me onto it, and man, it is something. It's not the best show in the world, but it is addicting, and I can't help but watch every episode, and I'm fully enthralled. So quick tangent there. Back to James Blanchard. The second reason why Notre Dame wants him so bad is he has an eye for under-the-radar talent. If you look at the blue chips from the Mid-South region over the last 3 years, Texas Tech is the first Power 4 offer for a sizable chunk of those prospects. So they're able to recognize talent before everyone else. And they might not have the power or the resources to close the deal on all of these guys, but the fact that they can spot the talent before everyone else is very encouraging. And if you take his skill set as an evaluator and you combine it with the resources and the history and everything that Notre Dame has to offer, you should be able to close on a lot more of those top prospects. The third thing here, I think that James Blanchard is a perfect fit for Notre Dame's culture and their strategy, what Marcus Freeman wants in this position, because Freeman constantly stresses the importance of relationships and building the program through high school recruiting and development. That's how Blanchard builds his roster. They prioritize high school recruiting, and then they fill gaps in the transfer portal where they need to fill gaps. There's another interesting excerpt from his bio that points to this. Quote, he reshaped the Red Raiders' entire recruiting process from scouting to on-campus visits as part of Texas Tech's unique model that resembles an NFL front office, end quote. That's exactly what Marcus Freeman is looking for in the new role as general manager. When Chad Bone was promoted, he had been really focused on recruiting high school players, and now he had to oversee the entire department. It wasn't just looking at high school recruiting. Now he's looking at NFL. Now he has to look at the transfer portal. Like, there was just a lot more on his plate. And I also heard from a source that Tech has the most robust and competent personnel office in the country, and it starts with him. So everything that Chad Bone was asked to do, James Blanchard has already done it at Texas Tech, and he's proven that he's really capable at doing it. So in summary, Blanchard checks all the boxes. He's a great evaluator. He understands the importance of relationships and how to run a personnel department in modern college football, and he has proof of concept that his method works. So Notre Dame has to get this deal done. And if they do, we could see some big changes to the program. We're breaking it down next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Looking for tickets to your next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat, and I could not believe the value. It was a steal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It's so reassuring. And the best part, you are covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they will refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So if Notre Dame is able to get this done and they hire James Blanchard to be the next general manager, what would it mean for the program? Well, from a perception standpoint, I think this would be a move that captures the attention of people from around the country. Like I said, Blanchard has had plenty of suitors in the past, in Texas and from a national perspective as well. But he is consistently elected to stay at Texas Tech. Now, they have obviously helped it out by offering a ton of money, but the fact that Notre Dame would be able to poach him away from a situation where he's already extremely happy, especially on the heels of a national championship run, is telling, right? It means that Notre Dame means business. And reports indicate that they would be willing to pay him seven figures or somewhere close to it, right? So they'd be willing to spend the money. And when Chad Bowden left, let's be honest, some people on the outside were alarmed by this. They were a little bit confused, right? This guy is one of Marcus Freeman's close friends. Freeman was in Bowden's wedding. He was a big part of this rebuild and this new era under Marcus Freeman. He's also going to a rival, and they tripled what he was making in Notre Dame. So some people could see that and think, well, was Notre Dame just not willing to pay? Did they not value the general manager position? Are they a serious program? Well, if they're able to get James Blanchard, that's a big indication that they are a very serious program. Notre Dame paying seven figures or anywhere close to that for a general manager position would be unheard of, right? Like 10 years ago. 2017 wasn't that long ago, and Notre Dame got outbid for defensive coordinator Mike Elko. He left to take the job at Texas A&M simply because they paid a lot more. That was a wake-up call for Notre Dame, that they needed to pay their assistants a lot more money. And we have seen in recent years that Notre Dame is absolutely willing to shell out big money for their coordinators. Mike Denbrock and Al Golden last year were two of the highest paid coordinators in all of college football. But the general manager position is obviously different than a coordinator. It wasn't even a thing like 5 years ago. So Notre Dame is usually a little bit behind on this, but if they're willing to ante up right now and pay that kind of money for an outside hire at the general manager position, that shows you just how invested the program and the university is in the football program. And yeah, perception isn't everything, right? But it certainly matters in this industry. And hiring a guy like James Blanchard after letting Chad Bowden walk, like I said, a guy who came up under Freeman and helped build Notre Dame, I think that sends a message that they're not going to be complacent. They are always trying to elevate, and if they think that James Blanchard is a better option, and so far all of their actions seem to indicate that is how they feel, that sends a message. And everything I've heard and everything that I've read about James Blanchard has been overwhelmingly positive. Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire called him the best evaluator in college football. There was another great quote from Eric Thomas's article when he spoke with a prominent recruiting coordinator in Texas who said, Blanchard is the most effective and efficient GM and recruiter in the area, end quote. Actions speak louder than words. And Texas Tech is doing everything they possibly can to keep James Blanchard in the fold. They recognize how valuable he is, and that is the most important indication to me that Blanchard is really, really good at his job. Like, it's great to hear all these other people say great things about him, and, you know, you could say he's a rising star in the industry. He could make it on these lists and stuff, but what really matters is that the people around him who work with him on a day-to-day basis are willing to spend a ton of money to keep him around, right? And it's not like Texas Tech has had a ton of success on the field in recent years because of all the restrictions that we've kind of already talked about on the show. And they're building something, though, under Joey McGuire. They have things headed in the right direction, and that program has had success before under Mike Leach. And James Blanchard is a big reason why. So Texas Tech is trying to keep him, but it doesn't look like they're going to be successful this time around. So that tells me that James Blanchard is really, really good at his job. And other people around the college football world, they have taken notice, and they would recognize this as a really big deal for Notre Dame. So if they're able to get him on, I think you'd see a really big change right away in how much Notre Dame emphasizes Texas in recruiting. And it could pay huge dividends, right? Because Marcus Freeman made recruiting in Texas a priority once he became the head coach. We started to see immediate dividends, right, when Notre Dame was able to steal Jaden Greathouse away from Texas. They also added Jadarian Price, who's from Texas, and Leonard Moore, maybe one of the best seasons of any true freshman in the history of Notre Dame. He's also from Texas. So those are three very prominent players on the Notre Dame roster, but that's really it. They don't have a ton of other guys on the roster from Texas. They've got Keidron young running back, bright future. KK Smith has been kind of buried on the wide receiver depth chart. So it became a thing, honestly, when Chancey Stuckey was hired as the wide receivers coach because he came from Baylor, and there was a lot of emphasis for him specifically in that state. But overall, Notre Dame has not really recruited Texas that well in a long time. But this class in 2026, they have already offered 14 prospects out of Texas, 9 of which are blue chip recruits. Some of the key guys include running back Javian Osborne, wide receivers Braden Robinson and Caden Finley, and offensive tackle Felix Ojo. So they're placing more of an emphasis on this cycle, and then if they're able to bring James Blanchard into the fold, I think they would go even harder in that state. So if they're able to get him on board, it's not unrealistic for Notre Dame to land like 5 Texans every class. And if they're anywhere close to as good as Jaden Greathouse or Jadarian Price, that's a really good thing for Notre Dame. And why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to prioritize Texas if you can actually get those kids? A big reason why a lot of schools in the Midwest don't try to get players from Texas is a lot of times they aren't willing to leave the state. There's so many great options nearby, like Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, hell, even Baylor to a lesser degree. Like, there's just so many options in that area. But if you get a guy like James Blanchard who knows the area, knows the high school coaches, I think that he is going to have a lot more success bringing high school kids out of the state and into South Bend, Indiana. It'd be a massive culture shock for sure, but if anyone can do it, it seems like James Blanchard is the guy to do it. I also think that if they're able to get him, it would represent a big shift in Notre Dame's approach to how they run the personnel department, because they'd be willing to branch out and get the best of the best, not just the best in-house. And last year, when Michigan pursued Chad Bowden, Notre Dame was like, all right, we got to promote Chad to be the general manager. I think now, looking back, that might not be his greatest strength. Or maybe he'll prove me wrong at USC. That's certainly possible. They think very highly of him. They're letting him run their department for a whole lot of money. But I think Notre Dame wants an NFL-style system, especially in this new revenue sharing era that we're about to enter here. And I think that that's exactly the type of style and that's the type of program that James Blanchard runs at Texas Tech and would run at Notre Dame. And I think Marcus Freeman and his staff have been kind of figuring out how to run the personnel department in recent years. Like I said, they weren't planning on making Chad Bowden the GM until Michigan came in. And when Marcus Freeman tried to get James Blanchard a couple of years ago and they weren't able to get him, they ended up hiring Butler Benton for a high-ranking role in the department, and Ben's already out of the program. So Marcus Freeman has definitely hit on some big-time coordinators, obviously, but I still think he's figuring things out with the personnel department, so he wants to bring in a guy from the outside like James Blanchard and say, hey, this is yours now. Run it how you want. Now, Marcus Freeman obviously is going to have a say in the vision and things like that, but it seems like they're pretty aligned, and getting a guy from the outside who's already proven that he can do it would be a big shift compared to what Notre Dame has been doing in recent years. They're honestly looking for someone to come in and shake things up, and that leads me to my first order of business for James Blanchard would be reshape the whole organization and the scouting department to make it that NFL stadium or an NFL style. They've already kind of got there, right? Notre Dame is becoming more of an NFL-style organization. But if you bring in a guy like James Blanchard, he's going to get all the ducks in a row. And I think it'll allow Notre Dame to capitalize on all the momentum they have from the run of the national title game and land some of those big-time recruits that they've been missing, because that's going to be the most noteworthy story, the most public way to sort of recognize James Blanchard, his work, if he's able to get this job. Because, restructuring the staff and the org chart isn't going to make any headlines, right? But if Notre Dame is able to land a couple big-time recruits, especially some guys out of Texas, then everyone is going to see, wow, this hire is really working out well for Notre Dame, or it's not. Coming off that national title run, Notre Dame has to land a class that is in the top 10 at the high school recruiting ranks. Like, they have to get in the top 10. I think we've all been, I've been pretty transparent in saying that this most recent class, the most recent high school recruiting class has been a bit of a disappointment, because Notre Dame was ranked first at one point, and then they finished like 12th. That can't happen going forward. They have so much going for them right now. They need to get a top 10 class, and honestly, a top 5 would be preferred, and I think it's attainable now that they just went to the national championship. So the future is bright for Notre Dame regardless, but they need to continue to elevate, like Marcus Freeman loves to say, and if they're able to hire James Blanchard, I believe he will help elevate this program for years to come. But that's it for the off-the-field moves on today's show. Now let's take a look at what's going to happen on the field next season. The 2025 schedule is here, and man, it is going to be a lot tougher than last season. More on that right after this. Notre Dame officially announced their 2025 schedule last Friday, and it projects to be significantly tougher than last season's schedule. But it should be a lot more entertaining, because there's going to be a lot more intriguing matchups this season. Now, let's get this out of the way. We're talking about a schedule here on February 4th. A lot is going to change between now and the start of the season. And then once the season starts, a lot of our preconceived notions about the quality of opponents on Notre Dame's schedule might prove to be very wrong. Although you look at last season, all offseason we were saying this is going to be a weak schedule. And guess what? It was a very weak schedule. It was honestly maybe even easier than we thought, because Florida State ended up being an absolute dumpster fire, right? So when I look at this schedule, I feel pretty confident saying it's going to be tough. Before we get to the regular season, should point out that Notre Dame announced that they're doing the spring game on April 12th, my birthday as a matter of fact, to get them ready for the next season. And then they will open the year on Sunday, August 31st, against Miami, in Miami. Notre Dame had not been very good there. Up until recently, they did beat Penn State. Now, granted, different environment, right? There's not Hurricane fans in the crowd for the Orange Bowl, but that is a very tough way to start the season. They're going up against Miami, who Carson Beck is expected to be the starting quarterback, although it sounds like, he had a pretty major surgery, right? So I assume he's going to be ready for the season opener. Either way, even though Miami has a lot to rebuild this season, like, there's going to be a bunch of talented players on that team. They've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a pretty good coach, Mario Cristobal, and that stadium is going to be rocking. So it is going to be a tough environment for Notre Dame to play in, not to mention the fact that they're going to be breaking in a brand new starting quarterback who's little to no starting experience and a new defensive coordinator. So that's a lot to ask. Then they have a bye week 2, which sucks. I hate that. The excitement, the buildup for week 1 of college football season, to experience that and then have to sit the next week out, like, that is going to be agonizing. But I think the reason that they have a bye is because their home opener is going to be very tough. They host the Texas A&M Aggies on Saturday, September 13th. I'm sure that's going to be a primetime game. So right off the bat, you have 2 ranked matchups almost guaranteed, and those are going to be 2 very tough games. Then they get to play Purdue at home, who they should destroy, considering they beat them by 59 this past season. They're going to have a brand new head coach, total rebuild in that organization. And then they're going to have to go on the road and play Arkansas. And I know that Arkansas was not great last year and Sam Pittman was nearly fired, but they also beat Tennessee at home, and Tennessee was a playoff team. So going on the road and playing at Arkansas is going to be very tough. Week after that, they're going to host Boise State. And yeah, Boise State is going to lose Ashton Genty to the NFL draft, but that's still a really solid program. They have other good players. They just made it to the college football playoff. Then after that, they've got NC State at home, and then USC at home, and then they have a bye week. I would have preferred that bye week to be before USC, but what can you do? Then they go on the road and face Boston College. Then they play Navy at home, at Pitt, home against Syracuse in the home finale, Senior Day, and then they go on the road to play Stanford. There were some rumors that that game could be played at the Rose Bowl, but if they did that, then Stanford would only have 5 true home games on the year. So Notre Dame was in on it, the Rose Bowl was in on it, Stanford was not. So Notre Dame is going to play in front of a 50% full crowd in Palo Alto to close out the year. So this is a tough schedule, right? There might not be one obvious top 10 team in there, although I do think Texas A&M is going to be very good, but they just don't have really any gimmies. And they open the season with their 2 toughest games, on the road at Miami and then home against Texas A&M. Like I said, having that bye week 2 sucks, and maybe it will end up being a good thing because that first half of the year is a gauntlet. 5 of those 7 games are at home, but the issue is the 2 road games are going to be very difficult, going on the road and playing at Miami in a hostile environment and going on the road to play at Arkansas, and they're going to be so excited to welcome Notre Dame into town. So that first half of the season is going to be about survival. Like I said, you're going to have a brand new starting quarterback, a brand new defensive coordinator, a lot of new leaders on the team who are going to have to step up, and they're going to be tested right away because this team is going to deal with some adversity right off the bat. And even though the second half is easier on paper, there really aren't any gimmies. Like outside of Navy and probably Stanford, there's not any game you can look at and say that is an automatic win. NC State, USC, at Boston College, at Pitt, and Syracuse could all be tricky if Notre Dame doesn't show up and play their best. Is Notre Dame going to be favored in every single one of those games? Yes, but it only takes one off Saturday for any one of these teams to pull off the upset. And Boston College looked good last season under Bill O'Brien. Pitt, Pat Narduzzi, and we know how much Pat Narduzzi hates Notre Dame. And, I don't have respect for him or that program, but they've been decent, and Pitt has given Notre Dame fits in the past. Syracuse is coming off a really good season, although it looks like they're going to lose their offensive coordinator. Kyle McCord headed to the NFL. NC State, even though they had a really bad season this past year, they've had a lot of 8 to 9 win seasons. So again, Notre Dame is going to be favored. They should beat all of those teams, but it's just not going to be that easy. All in all, they've got 7 true home games, but also 5 true road games. Normally there's 2 road games that are at an NFL stadium. Not this year. That's 5 true road games, including 2 at some pretty hostile environments. And then they've got 10 games total against Power 4 opponents. 10, right? They're not playing a MAC school, which honestly, in retrospect, might end up being a good thing for Notre Dame to avoid, Northern Illinois or anything close to that this year. But you look at the schedule overall, last year Notre Dame had to finish undefeated or 11-1 to make the playoffs. If they had lost another game after Northern Illinois, they would not have made the college football playoffs. I think with this schedule, they're getting in if they go 10-2 because there are a lot of teams who could be ranked, and then a couple teams like Miami and Texas A&M who could be ranked really high. So if you lose a couple games, if they end up losing to one of those teams who end up being really good and say they drop one to, NC State or whatever, I think Notre Dame is going to get in at 10-2 because they're going to have enough quality wins to sort of carry that resume. I think by the end of the year, their strength of schedule metric is going to be really high. And if you look at it, 5 of these 6 teams could end up being ranked, like Miami, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Boise State, USC, and then one of either Pitt, Syracuse, NC State. They're going to play maybe 6 ranked teams next year. So this is going to be a battle-tested group, and they should pile up some ranked wins. In the first month is going to make or break this team, but part of the thing is if you lose early on in the season, people are a lot more forgiving at the end of the year, right? Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, even though everyone remembered that. By the end of the year, they were coming in with a ton of momentum, so they just were climbing up those rankings. So if they drop 1 or 2 early on, but then they get hot and they, end the season on an 8-game winning streak and go 10-2, I feel very comfortable about their chances of getting in the college football playoff. But that first half, man, is about survival. I would be shocked if they make it to October unscathed. I shouldn't say shocked because, they're probably going to be favored in all of these games. Maybe not Texas A&M, although I think they're probably going to be favored in that. But it's just going to be really tough, right? So if they can get through to October and they're hosting Boise State and they're undefeated, then this team is in prime position to not only make the playoff, but host another playoff game in the first round. But it's just going to be very hard because even though there's a ton of talent on this roster, and I think without a doubt Notre Dame is going to be one of the top 12 teams in the country next year, having a brand new starting quarterback and a new defensive coordinator with a lot of rebuilding at some key leadership spots is already going to be tough. And then you add in the fact that they're playing all these tough teams at the very beginning, it just makes it even harder. But personally, I'm excited that there's going to be so many fun games, right? Like at Miami is going to be a blast. Home against Texas A&M is going to be fun. At Arkansas is a unique game that Notre Dame doesn't normally play. Hosting Boise State. Like if you're going to play a group of 5 team, Boise State certainly has a ton of history. Home against USC is going to be awesome. On the road at BC, that could be tricky, right? Against Bill O'Brien and what he's got building over there. So overall, it's going to be very tough, but it should be a lot more fun for the fans, and I think we could all use that after a very boring regular season this past year. All right, that's going to do it for me today. We're going to talk about the schedule and all these different matchups, so much more throughout the offseason, but that's a great reminder to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, so that way you never miss an episode during the offseason. Even though we're pumping out shows throughout the season, we're doing the same during the offseason as well. And tomorrow, I'm going to be back right here with recruiting insider Eric Thomas from Irish Illustrated to break down James Blanchard, dive more into his profile, assuming we get an announcement by then. We're also going to talk about Notre Dame's biggest needs on the recruiting trail in the class of 2026, and then we're going to have a new episode every day throughout the rest of the week, including a mailbag on Friday, the very first mailbag of the offseason. So if you've got questions, you want them answered on the show, send them in. You can submit yours in the YouTube comments below, or you can send them in on social media. The X account is @LockedOnIrish, or you can DM me on Instagram @LockedOnIrishPod. If you enjoyed the show today, please give this video a like if you are watching on YouTube, or rate the show 5 stars and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.